Walter. So great to have you on the podcast. How are you today?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm pumped up. Let's kick things off.
Yeah.
First, a little bit about your background, and then lead that into TiiCKER. How you decided to come up with this, and we'll talk about a bunch of stuff today: future loyalty programs, startup culture in general. We can jump around; it doesn't matter. Let's do this thing. I'm excited. Off to you.
Love it, man. I'm Walter Ward III, born and raised in Detroit. I call Atlanta home most days now, but I'm all over the place. Detroit, Atlanta, sometimes New York, DC. I would describe myself as corporate America's, you know, Forrest Gump. I just kind of found myself in some really amazing opportunities. So, by way of professional background, I was a banker for many years at JPMorgan. I did everything from retail banking, sales coaching to money movement and payments. When I got my MBA at Emory, focused it in alternative investments and privates, that kind of thing. Went out, did the consulting thing, moved to New York, started consulting for a firm that built strategy gaming scenarios for executives. Think of it like war games, video games for executives practicing how to implement their strategy. Did that for a number of years, focused in the financial services area. Came back to Detroit, did some strategy and audit work. On the side, I started a company called the Mobile Business School. Someone that went through a workshop I was doing ended up asking me to represent them in some mediation they had with an investor. The irony is this investor and I have become really cool. His name is Jeff Lambert. He had an investor relations firm called Lambert and Co. He eventually asked me to become his chief of staff. So I become his chief of staff. And he has this wonderful idea to start this shareholder loyalty program called TiiCKER. So I can't claim credit for the idea, but I'm a co-founder for being around and being his chief of staff at that point in time. Eventually, I left, became chief of staff of liquidity at Silicon Valley Bank during the liquidity crisis. So that was an adventure. Probably could do a whole podcast on that. And then after that, became chief operating officer at BlackRock's innovation hub in Atlanta, and also chief operating officer of their ETF platform innovation and change. And during that time, I was on TiiCKER's board. And then eventually Jeff said, hey, man, TiiCKER needs a full-time CEO, somebody understands this, who gets it, and is going to drive it forward. And that's what brings me to TiiCKER today.
That's really cool. How you were there early on. You're one of the co-founders.
Mhm.
You got to see what was happening in the early days. Then you left,
Mhm.
got some more experience at some of these other great places too, like not
Yep.
just these small places.
Yep.
And then, okay, who do we bring in to be CEO? We bring in the former chief of staff who
Mhm.
has the experience, but also knows what we're trying to do here. That is,
Mhm.
you don't hear that. Like, you hear of people at the company kind of moving, but
Yeah.
it just shows how good your relationship still was when you can leave and you're still the choice to
Yeah.
come bring. That's awesome. Really cool.
Man, I didn't think of it that way, but I appreciate that. And shout out to Jeff for, having the foresight to kind of understand that too. But thank you.
I love that. Well, let's talk a little bit more about TiiCKER. Let's assume that there's, I think it's less likely today than a couple years ago, but let's
Hmm.
assume there's people listening to the podcast that have never heard about TiiCKER ever.
Hmm.
Kind of give us that lay of the land of what does the company look like today? What are you trying to do?
Yeah.
And how do you see this impacting the future of loyalty programs?
Yeah. So TiiCKER, at its most base form is a loyalty platform for shareholders. Essentially, we believe at the end of the day that people that own stock, they literally own part of a company. They should feel like they own part of a company. And we do that by working with publicly traded companies to provide perks to their retail shareholders. It's really important that that exists because it really there hasn't been a platform like TiiCKER that's existed in the past for a number of reasons. But the reason it's important now is that over the last 15 years, retail investors have really become supercharged, and it goes back to the 2008 crisis. People felt like, hey, banks got bailed out, I didn't get bailed out. It goes into 2013 where commission-free trading comes in with Robinhood and people being able to trade in their pocket. And then you have that coupled with what happened in 2020, stimulus checks, people have time. All of a sudden, people are really engaged, in trading. So what does that look like? Well, maybe a week ago, we just had the highest transaction volume of retail shareholders in history, right? What it looks like is a quarter of market traffic on any given day is driven by retail shareholders. And it looks like people are more involved, the Reddit communities, the YouTube communities, the, you know, all these things are pointing towards retail shareholders are more important, and most companies don't have a strategy for it or know how to reach them, and that's where we step in. So that's where we are today. In the future, we're actually bringing more of a points and perks. So think of it as more of a true loyalty platform for retail shareholders. Are really excited about that. Just launched an AI product yesterday that allows users to validate their holdings by just taking a picture of their statement. Really, a lot of really cool things happening at TiiCKER. So super excited to be part of the mission.
What are you seeing, like, are there any I hate to ask you to, like, single out anyone, but, like, are
Yeah.
there any particular stocks that you see a lot of your members having?
Um,
Or, like, is, a stronger loyalty program, like, is there any
it's
you
a
don't
good
have to be,
question.
like, a
Yeah.
bunch of them, but, like, if there's any that
Yeah.
come to mind that you're like, "Actually, I see this quite a bit."
Yeah. So it's really interesting. We have like companies on our platform. Some of them are not like brands that are well known. There's one in particular called Dolphin Entertainment.
I've heard of
And
Dolphin.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If you have 50 shares of Dolphin Entertainment for 2 weeks or more, you can get a free pint of Haagen-Dazs. Seems like it's something, people love free ice cream, right? Especially you're going to get it for just holding the shares. So we have that. Another one of my favorites that I see people redeem a lot of is Lionsgate, which is like the entertainment company. You own 50 shares of Lionsgate for 2 weeks or more, you can get Stars, the cable app for half off for the year. Things like that, people are really attracted to. There's another one around Willamette Valley and wines. People redeem a lot of that, so there are a couple things that, on the platform people redeem a lot of.
I'd imagine still, though, the bulk of these programs center around consumer-driven companies, right? Just by design, because it makes sense because there's probably more kind of
Yeah.
consumer benefits that you can give them, right? Perks for being associated.
That's the general idea. We're on the bleeding edge of this. So there are a lot of companies that do offer perks already. A lot of companies don't. But here's the reason why they don't and why we're important. They don't because typically companies don't know who their retail shareholder base is. So they get these lists. They might know who maybe 5%, 10% of them are. They know that this person at this address owns these shares. What TiiCKER does is because we verify automatically in the background and we have other demographic data, we know exactly who those retail shareholders are, what else they're holding, how long they hold, what their brand preferences are. And because of that, we can work with the companies to craft a more tailored offering to their retail shareholders. And we're seeing even companies now that are not public but are going public are starting to want to work with us to figure out what their perk strategy should be for their retail shareholders. So to answer your question, yes, ideally it's more about these consumer facing brands that are high consumable types of things, but it's all over. And with the new points platform in the future, even companies that are, more B2B will find value in hosting a perk on our platform.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like
Me too.
Yeah. Well, you have to like it. I can do
Right.
uh, uh, but yeah, it's, super interesting. Now, let's talk a little bit about the culture you implement and then just, like, also just startup culture in general and really
Yeah.
how you compare to, the typical startup culture.
Mhm.
You and I do wanna give you that opportunity because you and I were having a fun conversation before we started recording
Yeah.
just around, like, how typical startup culture is when it comes to fundraising and
Mhm.
kind of building things based on something you see, not something that you actually, like, believe in and feel, right? But
Yeah.
I'll kick it over to you. Yeah, talk me through startup culture and really your thoughts on it.
Sure, man. I'm a big believer in design thinking. So what I've found, in my current chair and my previous chairs, the best companies, particular ones that are consumer facing, are birthed out of a radical empathy for humans doing what they do every day. One of my favorite examples is Square. You think about Square, it's kind of counterintuitive to have this little thing. But if you observe humans doing their everyday thing, people making transactions every day, what you realize is that usually sales is very relational, and at the end, it gets very transactional, almost confrontational. So just observing that little weird thing, they say, hey, we want people to be able to make transactions anytime, anywhere, in a way that continues the relational flow. So you don't need a desk anymore. And you reduce that friction, and lo and behold, people have a better experience. People take it further. You got the Amazon stores now where you can just go in. and walk out, and somehow the magic and the ethos charges you. But the idea there is just watching people do what they do and reducing the friction. So a lot of times in startup culture now, people just say, hey, so and so raised this amount of money, so I'm just going to come up with this clone and do the same thing. We are human centric. We believe in the democratization of retail investing, and the platform is really built around that. And we're double clicking even harder on that for Ticker 3.0. We're really trying to delve into the UX, UI, and understanding what people are trying to do in their human experience when they're trying to invest. And we're building the next gen platform around that, man. So yeah. I don't know if it answers the question, but
Yeah, no, I loved it.
Mhm.
How do you see the future of finance like going, and then what is Ticker's role in that
Yeah.
area? I know you kind of play in some different buckets, right? Because you're
Mhm.
loyalty, but would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, man. So I think the future of investing, man, is social, and I think that's already been proven. So through the Reddits of the world, the communities that are popping up, I look at the power of the finfluencer. People like yourselves. I mean, like it's an important part of what's happening and how people are making decisions. At the same time, people are buying what they buy. You own an Apple computer, you already believe in that company, you're probably going to buy Apple stock. So, Ticker, we are looking at all those different components, like the idea that people are buying what they buy, the idea that investing is becoming more social, the idea that people want to learn more about the companies and they want to have a closer relationship with the executive teams and understanding what the strategy is. And we're building a platform around that. So we want to be the connection point that allows people to understand more about the companies they buy, learn about investing that way. And we want to empower them to essentially buy what they buy and be rewarded for it.
And in your model, who typically pays?
Yeah. So in our model today, the companies on our platform, they pay like a listing fee, and they sponsor the perk. That's how it works today. In the future, there'll be other ways that we monetize. Part of it is this idea of points and potentially inventing a new class of perk that's disintermediated from your actual holdings, but more about your behaviors in the platform and your aspirational holdings for companies. I'll say it that way. But there'll be other revenue streams that come from that. But right now, the companies pay to host the perk on the platform.
I think even what you could do in the future is some of the perks should pay. Like you could have
Mhm.
a new type of coffee brand or something that wants to launch, and then all of a sudden now that would be kind of cool too.
Yeah,
Because now they're paying to be seen by your audience that you've built up. You can do that. A lot of other people couldn't.
yeah. They're actually. I don't want to talk too much about
Yeah,
but I will say this. Imagine. We'll use your coffee example. Imagine a new coffee brand who is like, you know what, the Starbucks shareholders, I really want to be in front of them, and maybe this company isn't public yet. Maybe they're still private, but they're on the path to IPO. But they want to start their retail strategy now using our platform by starting to communicate with Starbucks shareholders because they're so you're right on the money, man. We're thinking alike. Yeah.
yeah. You could have so. I mean, you really have. Obviously, it comes down to prioritization and staying focused.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I like this business because you have so many different paths for monetization when you need to, which is really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like I mean, even when you think of, I didn't think of it, but like the Starbucks example, right? For these new
Hmm.
brands,
Hmm.
and maybe there's even future partnerships with some of these crowdfunding platforms, right? Like you were kind of
Yes.
you
Yeah.
were, yeah.
Yeah. There's we're still early in the game. We're running full speed, but there's so much that can be done. Like you said, it comes down to prioritization and what I call MTUs, managerial time units. You
Yeah.
can only do so much.
I do like to go through an exercise though.
Yeah,
Always like if I had unlimited time, what would you
yeah,
be doing? And then I
yeah,
write down everything, and then it
yep,
was just complete chaos, right? But
yep,
then that's kinda my strategy of, okay, if I had all the time in the world now, is this something I hire for? Is this something that gets shelved? Is this something that gets added to? But,
yep,
I like the fact that when I think of your business, all these ideas start coming into my
yep,
head, and
yep.
that means it's the businesses that can't do that should be very scared,
Yes. Yeah.
because that means they probably are not, and they have no pivot opportunities, which you always need to
Exactly.
pivot.
You need pivot. And I like what you do. What I do is I think of poker chips. I say, if I had 100 poker chips, here are all the initiatives that I want to do. This initiative might cost 10 poker chips, this one 5, this one 25. Where am I placing my big bets? Where am I putting my poker chips? And what you easily find is that there's more initiative than you ever have poker chips, but you only have so many. And you've got to focus your team and your development resources in one direction. And the poker chip thing is something that helps me, man. I love it.
Eh, I used to do time analysis too, where I'd write
Okay.
down every hour of the day, like what I was doing, like gym, walk. Okay, and I always told people it should be negative. Like you should have to go back and take stuff away.
Yeah.
Like at first go around when you write down like a time analysis, you should be
Yep.
like -2, -3 hours. Don't look at the hour. Just write down how long you think it's going to take everything, and
Yep.
then prioritize from there. You can do it a bunch of different ways, right? And everyone has
Mhm.
their own path, but I mean, we have different ways, but still there's some similarities. Cool.
I love it. I love it.
I love it. Walter, we're gonna have to have you come back on. This was fun. Black.
Anytime, man. Love it.
Good
Love
stuff.
what you're doing. Yeah. So anytime you want this.
Great. We'll talk soon. Thanks so
All
much.
right, talk to you, man. Thank you.